Some of these machines were too wild to last, too flawed to fix, and too fast for the laws that tried to contain them. Some vanished quietly, others left wreckage behind. But all of them went too far, and the world made sure they wouldn't do it again. Here are 15 most dangerous and banned motorcycles ever built. The best way to start this list is with the Suzuki TL 1000S. This motorbike was meant to rival Ducati's V-twin magic. Instead, it earned a far more terrifying reputation. The Suzuki TL 1000S roared into showrooms with a snarling 996cc V-twin, aggressive styling, and race-ready promise. But underneath the hype was a flaw so dangerous, it shook riders off the bike before they could learn its limits. At the heart of the chaos was Suzuki's bold, and ultimately disastrous, decision to use a rotary rear damper instead of a conventional shock absorber. The result? Violent, unpredictable handling. The rear end would suddenly unload during high-speed corners, triggering savage tank slappers that left even experienced riders rattled. Accidents piled up. Emergency rooms saw the aftermath. Headlines followed. In response to the growing crisis, Suzuki issued a global recall, retrofitting TL 1000S models with steering dampers to reduce the twitchiness. But by then, the damage was done, in shout. The bike's name had become synonymous with instability. Even after the fix, the reputation never faded. Riders still talk about it. Insurance companies flagged it, and motorcycle lore sealed its fate. The TL 1000S became a cautionary tale. A machine born from ambition, brought low by a single engineering gamble that went too far. Not all dangerous bikes are fast, but the TL 1000S was both, and dangerously unpredictable. But while Suzuki's danger came from flawed design, Kawasaki's next beast knew exactly what it was doing with this next motorbike. Number 2, Kawasaki H2 Mach 4. When Kawasaki unleashed the H2 Mach 4 in 1972, the world wasn't ready. A 748cc two-stroke triple with brutal acceleration and no electronic safety net, the H2 rewrote the definition of speed and survival. On paper, it was magnificent. 74 horsepower, feather-light frame, and a sound like a chainsaw in a wind tunnel. But the real experience was far less poetic. Twist the throttle too fast, and the front wheel clawed at the sky. Hit a corner, and the swing arm fought to keep up. Slam the brakes, and pray that they had enough bite. The problem? The engine overwhelmed everything else. The frame flexed under pressure. The suspension begged for mercy. The tires, brakes, and geometry weren't built to handle the fury of a two-stroke power band that exploded at high revs. It was like strapping a rocket to a tricycle. Motorcycle journalists of the era didn't praise it. They survived it. The nickname came quickly and stayed permanently. The Widowmaker. Not as a joke, but as a warning. In an era before traction control, anti-lock brakes, or frame stabilization, the H2 was raw, vicious, and utterly indifferent to your survival. Riders loved it. Riders feared it. Some didn't walk away. The Kawasaki H2 didn't pretend to be safe, but Honda? They took the opposite route with this next motorbike. Number 3, the Honda NR 750. The Honda NR 750 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a science experiment that looked like it had landed from the future. With oval pistons, a V4 engine, and a digital dashboard in 1992, it shattered every rule in the book. Honda didn't build it to win races, they built it to prove they could. The NR's engine was a marvel of engineering. 4 oval pistons, 8 valves per cylinder, and twin connecting rods. It behaved like a V8, but counted as a V4, sidestepping racing regulations in the most Honda way possible. But that cleverness didn't save it. The racing world rejected it. Oval pistons weren't just radical, they were unwelcome. The engine was banned from competition, not for breaking the rules, but for exposing their gaps. And even off the track, the NR 750 was too complex to survive. Maintenance was a nightmare. Parts were rare. Every piston required jewel-like precision to function. Riders didn't just need a license. They needed a team of engineers on standby. One mistake in assembly, one missed tolerance, and the whole thing could self-destruct. For that reason alone, it was safer behind glass than on the road. The NR 750 wasn't banned by law. It was banned by reality. A masterpiece too complex for the world it was born into. And once it disappeared, Honda never tried anything like it again. But while Honda built the NR 750 to challenge racing's rules, Yamaha built their next machine to bring Grand Prix madness to public streets. Number 4, Yamaha RZ 500. This was a street bike in name only. Everything else about the Yamaha RZ500 screamed race machine. Born directly from Yamaha's GP program, the RZ500 carried a liquid-cooled, two-stroke 500cc V4 engine, a direct descendant of the brutal YZR 500. That meant one thing. This thing wasn't just fast. It was violent. Cracked the throttle, and the power didn't build. It erupted. The RZ500's engine delivered a wild surge in the upper revs, launching riders forward with very little warning. No electronic traction control, no rider modes, no apologies. Combine that with a feather-light chassis and aggressive weight distribution, and you got a machine that rewarded expert control and punished overconfidence instantly. The danger wasn't just in the engine. It was in the idea, giving race-level power to the average rider on public roads, and governments started noticing. Emissions regulations closed in fast. The bike's two-stroke engine didn't just burn fuel, it belched out clouds of exhaust that failed environmental standards across the board. In the United States, it was effectively banned after just a couple years, locked out by regulators. Imports became rare, ownership became legendary, and yet it never truly vanished. Enthusiasts still hunt it down to restore it. The RZ500 was pulled off the streets, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well. It wasn't built to last. It was built to thrill, one terrifying ride at a time. The RZ500 was banned for bringing Grand Prix madness to public roads. But years later, Kawasaki did it again, this time with 4 strokes, sharper geometry, and no safety net at all. Number 5, Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R. This wasn't a sport bike, it was a weapon. When Kawasaki dropped the original ZX-10R in 2004, it didn't just join the leader bike war, it escalated it. With a ferocious power-to-weight ratio, unfiltered torque, and no electronic safety net, the ZX-10R was designed to do one thing: intimidate everyone who dared touch the throttle. It packed a lightweight chassis, ultra-sharp steering geometry, and an engine that delivered power like a punch to the chest. But all that brilliance came with a price. The moment you got it wrong, it punished you hard. There was no traction control, no ABS, no rider aids. Just you, your nerve, and a hair-trigger machine that didn't forgive mistakes. High-side crashes became common. Riders who treated it like a typical superbike found out quickly that it wasn't. The ZX-10R responded instantly, almost violently, to rider input. And if your reflexes weren't on point, it could flip you before you realized you'd lost traction. It developed a reputation, not among beginners, but among veterans, the ones who knew better. They warned this wasn't a bike for casual track days or Sunday joyrides. It was for the bold, the skilled, and maybe the reckless. Some riders respected it. Some feared it. Many walked away from it with broken bones and shattered confidence. It wasn't banned by law, but by common sense. Dealers started steering average buyers towards safer machines. Riders who wanted to stay alive did the same. And while Kawasaki built the ZX-10R to be vicious and raw, Ducati went in the opposite direction with this next bike. Number 6, Ducati 996R. This motorbike wasn't made for you, and Ducati didn't care. The 996R wasn't designed to be comfortable. It wasn't designed to be friendly. It was designed to homologate Ducati's next racing engine, and nothing else. At the center of the machine was the new Testa Stretta power plant, a high-compression, short-stroke V-twin engineered to scream at the track. And while its numbers were impressive, more horsepower, more torque, more RPM, none of that meant anything if you weren't ready to wrestle it into submission. Everything about the 996R was aggressive. The riding position was unforgiving. The power band was narrow and high-strung, and the throttle response, immediate and sometimes overwhelming. On the track, it sang. On the street, it snarled. Commuters who tried to tame it found themselves in a fight. City streets and canyon roads exposed its true personality. Brutal, twitchy, and built with zero compromise. Maintenance wasn't simple. Repairs weren't cheap, but none of that mattered to Ducati. The 996R was never about mass market appeal. It was about getting the engine into WSBK, and if that meant building a street version that hated traffic and roasted your thighs, so be it. It was dangerous not because it failed, but because it only operated properly at speeds most people should never reach. And if you didn't know how to handle that kind of performance, it would teach you the hard way. The Ducati 996R demanded elite skill. But then came BMW's K1 with a futuristic gamble that tried to tame and nearly lost control in the process. Number 7, BMW K1. The BMW K1 was supposed to be the future. A sport touring revolution with bold aerodynamics, a full fairing, and a blazing red paint job. But underneath the wind tunnel fantasy was a machine that quickly became one of BMW's most controversial misfires. It wasn't just heavy, it was unforgiving. The K1's massive chassis and futuristic bodywork created real-world problems. Riders expected nimble sport bike handling. What they got was a high-speed cruise missile that didn't want to change direction. Tight corners, slow maneuvers. The K1 fought back. Its radical design trapped engine heat, cooking riders at low speeds. The ergonomics felt forced. The suspension struggled to compensate for its weight, and the handling, especially at the limit, bordered on dangerous. BMW built the K1 to prove a point. The German engineering could outstyle and outspeed the Japanese. But what it delivered was a machine that confused its own identity. It wasn't quite sporty, it wasn't quite a tourer, and it certainly wasn't friendly. Riders reported instability at high lean angles. The bike resisted input, and the weight punished misjudged moves. Over time, the K1 became a cult classic. But not for the reasons BMW hoped. It was remembered for what it tried and failed to be. BMW tried to tame speed with bodywork and branding, but Suzuki unleashed it completely and forced the entire world to slam on the brakes with this next motorbike. Number 8. Suzuki Hayabusa. When the Suzuki Hayabusa arrived, it didn't ask for permission. It simply became the fastest production motorcycle the world had ever seen, and that scared people, a lot of people. It wasn't banned by the government, it was banned by fear. With a wind-cheating design and a massive inline-4 engine, the Hayabusa didn't tiptoe across the 180 miles per hour line. It shattered it. It wasn't just about top speed. It was about how quickly and effortlessly it got there. Brutal acceleration, smooth delivery, a missile in sport bike form. For the first time, lawmakers, safety boards, and even the general public started asking, how fast is too fast? News outlets warned about catastrophic crashes. Insurance companies raised red flags. Governments whispered about regulation. Manufacturers saw the writing on the wall, and in an unprecedented move, the big players, including Suzuki, reached an informal agreement. No more factory bikes would exceed a certain speed. After just one model year of unrestricted production, the unrestricted Busa was gone. What followed were limited versions, while electronically capped to avoid controversy. But even with a leash, its legend only grew. The name Hayabusa, which means peregrine falcon, wasn't just poetic. It was a strong warning to riders. The Hayabusa was banned by fear. Too fast, too powerful, too public. But danger doesn't always scream at 180 miles per hour. Sometimes it rides silent through the woods, just like his next motorbike. Number 9. KTM 450 EXC. The KTM 450 XC was never built for the road, and the road knew it. It came stripped of comfort, loaded with aggression, and powered by a fire-breathing 4-stroke single that demanded skill, strength, and a willingness to fall. A lot. It wasn't just light, it was skeletal. Everything unnecessary was carved away. What remained was pure race machinery, tall gearing, raw torque, and a suspension built to soar over rocks, logs, and ravines. But there was a problem. Some riders thought it could be tamed for the street, and at first, it could. The 450 EXC was technically street legal in certain regions until emissions boards got involved. Its race-tuned engine was never meant to pass smog checks, and as environmental regulations tightened, the bike's wild nature caught up with it. States began revoking its street status. Some models lost their road plates entirely, others became off-road only by law. Suddenly, a motorcycle built to conquer trails couldn't legally touch tarmac. Owners were forced to modify, restrict, or flat-out stop riding it on the street. For some, it was the end of a dream. For others, it was the beginning of a black market workaround. This wasn't a recall, it was a regulatory exile. The KTM 450 EXC was banned because it refused to conform, and once lawmakers noticed, there was no going back. KTM's 450 EXC was forced off the streets because it ran too wild, but our next machine, it was banned because it ran too dirty. Number 10, Aprilia RS 250. The Aprilia RS 250 was a street-legal race replica that shouldn't have existed. It looked like a toy, it rode like a missile, and it vanished almost overnight. Powered by a 249cc two-stroke engine derived from Suzuki's RGV 250, this lightweight predator was built for apexes. Its engine wasn't refined, it snarled. With explosive power delivery in the upper revs, the RS 250 demanded commitment. Every corner was a challenge, every straight, a rush. Riders who grew up on 4-strokes were stunned. This bike felt alive. twitchy, razor-sharp, and unapologetically aggressive. And it was beautiful. Twin-spar aluminum frame, GP-inspired bodywork, a weight so light you could lift it off the ground. It was a fantasy. Until the world caught up. Emissions laws tightened, and two-strokes became targets. They burned oil, they smoked, they stank, and no matter how good they performed, regulators didn't care. Aprilia was forced to pull the RS 250 from production, not because it wasn't loved, but because it was outlawed. The ban hit hard. Riders scrambled to buy what was left. Prices surged. Black market imports exploded. Today, the RS 250 lives on as a collector's icon, a reminder of what lightweight performance used to feel like before everything got heavier, quieter, and safer. And if you've ever seen one fly through a mountain pass, with smoke in its wake and the scream of a two-stroke in your ears, you'll know exactly why it had to go. The RS 250 was delicate, explosive, and deadly in the hands of the untrained, but the Fireblade was something else entirely. Number 11, Honda CBR 900RR. Before the CBR 900RR, sport bikes were fast but heavy, powerful but sluggish. Then Honda dropped a bomb in 1992, a lightweight superbike with the power of a liter-class engine and the mass of a 600. The result was chaos and a new breed of fear. The original Fireblade tipped the scales like a middleweight, but hit like a heavyweight. Its inline-4 engine screamed at the top of the rev range, and when it came alive fast. Too fast for some. The throttle was twitchy, the power curve unforgiving, and if you weren't ready when it hit its stride, it was already too late. Riders loved it, until it bit them. The bike's lightweight chassis responded to input so quickly, even minor mistakes could turn deadly. It didn't absorb errors, it amplified them. And for riders jumping from older, slower machines, the Fireblade was a trap disguised as an upgrade. There were no traction aids, no rider modes, just raw power, precision steering, and a reputation that grew as the injuries piled up. What made it revolutionary also made it dangerous. It didn't just raise the bar, it ripped the bar away, and for less experienced riders, that meant entering corners too fast, exiting them too wide, and high-siding before they even saw it coming. The CBR 900RR changed the game, but it didn't come with a warning label. Honda's Fireblade was deadly because it felt too light, but the next monster, it was dangerous because it was too heavy and too fast to stop once it started. Let's talk about the Yamaha VMAX. The Yamaha VMAX was built to conquer time itself, and it didn't care if you were ready. Powered by a monstrous V4 engine, the VMAX exploded off the line like a rocket sled, delivering torque that twisted asphalt and snapped necks. Its secret weapon was V-Boost, a system that opened intake valves at high RPMs to unleash even more fury. The result? One of the most aggressive straight-line accelerations ever put on two wheels. But that came with a warning, and not the kind written on paper. The VMAX wasn't just heavy, it was stubborn. It didn't want to turn. It didn't like curves. It punished overconfidence. Riders used to sport bikes found themselves wrestling a beast that didn't believe in forgiveness. Its brakes were decent. Its suspension, not so much. And the longer you stayed on the throttle, the more it dared you to test your own limits. This was not a machine you pushed, it pushed back. Crashes happened, not because riders underestimated the power, but because they overestimated everything else. Corners became threats. Off-camber turns were traps. And when that front end drifted wide under pressure, the weight did the rest. But for those who knew what they were handling, the VMAX was addictive. Terrifying, but addictive. The Yamaha VMAX didn't pretend to be safe. That's why it earned your respect, or your scars. The VMAX didn't take corners. It conquered straight lines with brute force and dared you to hold on. But long before that, Kawasaki had already written the first chapter in that book. With a superbike so raw, it raced ahead of its own brakes. Number 13, Kawasaki Z1900. When the Z1900 hit the streets in the early 70s, it instantly rewrote the rules. It was Kawasaki's answer to Honda's CB750, but with one critical difference: it didn't just keep up, it broke away. With a 4-cylinder DOHC engine pushing performance to a new frontier, the Z1 offered breathtaking speed for its time. But what made it a legend also made it dangerous. Its engine outpaced everything else, especially the brakes and suspension. Riders found themselves clinging to a machine that could launch like a missile, but struggled to stop like a motorcycle. Handling at high speeds was imprecise. The rear suspension flexed, the front fork dived under pressure, and when pushed hard, the Z1 reminded you that early superbikes were still figuring it out. It wasn't for the faint of heart. One wrong move in a corner and the weight would swing wide. The brakes, already underpowered for the Z1's speed, didn't help. The result? A motorcycle that demanded respect, and punished arrogance. Still, riders lined up to buy one. Why? Because it was thrilling. Because it was faster than anything else on the road. Because danger for some was part of the appeal. The Z1900 proved that power without balance was a dangerous game. And a decade later, Suzuki doubled down, but that still didn't quite work. Number 14, Suzuki GSX-R 1100. When Suzuki released the GSX-R 1100, it wasn't subtle. It was the big brother of the GSX-R 750. Longer, heavier, more powerful, and absolutely unfiltered. With a massive inline-4 engine and old-school engineering, the 1100 delivered brute force at a price. That price was stability. The GSX-R 1100 could crush a straight line. Its top-end power was intoxicating. But when things got twisty, the flaws showed fast. The heavy frame flexed under load. Cornering at high speeds felt vague and delayed. The more power you applied, the more you had to fight the bike to stay on track. There was no rider aid, no electronic stability, no forgiveness. The 1100 didn't whisper into corners. It roared through them and hoped for the best. In the early years, its rawness earned it fans, but also crashes. Many riders underestimated what they were holding on to. The GSX-R 1100 rewarded confidence, but it demanded restraint. As newer, more refined superbikes entered the scene with better geometry, lighter frames, and smarter design, the 1100 started to feel like a relic. It wasn't banned by law, it was banned by progress. And that might be the most dangerous thing of all, a machine that time left behind, but riders kept pushing too far. The GSX-R 1100 was dangerous because of its muscle, but the Bimota Vavdu, it was dangerous because it nearly destroyed the company that dared to build it. Wrapping the list is the Bimota V-Du. The Bimota 5-Du was supposed to be a masterpiece, a revolutionary two-stroke 500cc road bike with fuel injection, handmade Italian styling, and MotoGP DNA. It looked like the future, and on paper it was. But once it hit the road, reality hit back, hard. The fuel injection system didn't just glitch, it sabotaged the ride. Throttle response was erratic. Power delivery was unpredictable. At times, it surged. At others, it fell flat. Riders reported misfires, hesitation, even dangerous lurching mid-corner. It wasn't just unpleasant, it was unsafe, and it didn't stop there. Maintenance was a nightmare. Reliability was a coin toss. Riders wanted passion and performance. What they got was panic. Bimota recalled the V-Due, tried to retrofit carbs, and even renamed it. But the damage was irreversible. It didn't take long for the story to turn tragic. The company collapsed financially, and the V-Due was a major reason. What began as a dream, the first Bimota designed and built entirely in-house, ended as a cautionary tale and hubris. Still, to collectors, the V-Due remains seductive. Its rarity, its promise, its flaws, all frozen in time. This bike wasn't killed by competition. It was killed by its own ambition. And no amount of carbon fiber or Italian craftsmanship could save it from the consequences of being rushed too far, too fast. Some of these bikes were banned by law, others by fear, failure, or sheer force of reality. But all of them left a mark, on riders, on history, and on the edge of what machines were ever meant to do. Which one would you dare ride? Let us know below, and subscribe for more untold stories on Two Wheels.